Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my first update on my experience with the Lenovo Yoga 9i for 2022. Now, this is the 7th generation of this top-of-the-line 2-in-1 Ultrabook, and it has been completely reimagined. And the good news is they did an excellent job. Now, granted, this is just an update, not a full review, but so far I am thoroughly enjoying what Lenovo has put together. And yes, we have brand new internals, Intel's 12th gen Core i7-1260p 12-core CPU, as well as 16 gigs of soldered LPDDR5 RAM, a 1 terabyte Gen 4 NVMe SSD, Wi-Fi 6E, Thunderbolt 4. But the most impressive element, I think, is the brand new 4K OLED display. It is only 60 hertz, but I don't think that's a big deal. Of course, still touchscreen, pen input with the Precision Pen 3, which is no longer in a silo. But if you care about color critical work, or I should just say color accuracy and overall quality, then this display is top of the line, just like the Yoga 9i itself. And it's something I've always been waiting for Lenovo to incorporate, and now we finally have it. And it's got a 16:10 aspect ratio. So let's take a look at that right now. I have HDR enabled, and I really do think this display is great. I think that anyone who uses this is going to enjoy it. You may be noticing the letterboxing on this. Remember, it is a 16:10 panel, not 16:9. So that's just inherent when working with this aspect ratio. But that's going to afford you more, essentially, room height for any sort of productivity work or even browsing the web, which I think is inherently valuable on a machine like this. Now, some other video samples just quickly to take you through it. And don't forget, this also has best-in-class audio performance like every Yoga 9i or C940 before it. And that, I think, is also something to be enjoyed. And the fact that it's a soundbar means you can use this in any orientation you prefer. Tent mode, content consumption mode, tablet mode. I mean, they all are going to get essentially the same audio performance. And now we have B&O speakers. In the past, they were Dolby Digital, but they weren't branded. Apparently, Lenovo has struck a deal, and so we have a branded and more feature-rich audio experience, which I think sounds very similar to previous generations, and that is a good thing because it's also excellent. You're going to hear that a lot, and that's because really Lenovo outdid themselves with this redesign. They tried their hand at this last generation, and it was a bit of a hit and a miss. Some things improved, some things they created new problems. Here, the complete opposite. Everything about this machine, I think, is going to make the majority of people that buy it really, really happy. So I've established, even though this is a 60 hertz panel, it is fantastic. And of course, if you don't want an OLED, you can step down to IPS panels. In fact, the only version of this, or I should say configuration right now, is a 1200p IPS panel. I'll include a link in the description. This particular build, not available for order yet. It should be soon. It'll be somewhere around $2,000 US, but that will go on sale over time for anyone that's concerned. And I think that, if you're being more budget conscious, that 1200p IPS version of this, which only has 8 gigs, not 16, but same processor, essentially every other element is the same except for the display and RAM, you're probably still going to be really happy with that machine. The IPS panel should still be very good. It's just not going to be OLED, and there's no way to really put that in any other terms. Now let's take a listen to the audio performance. Then I'm going to talk about general performance here. So take a listen to this. Take this up to 100%.
Here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick unboxing and a first look at the Lenovo Yoga 9i Gen 7. I'm excited to share this with all of you because this is a major revamp for 2022.
Skip ahead.
Lest I forget, all the modes of capability with this. Tent mode,
Google Fi,
Of course we would catch
the
an
phone
ad,
plan
right?
by Google. Save big on the new Samsung Galaxy S22 series.
Stand it up a little bit more, content consumption mode. I mean, that's the whole premise of using a machine like this, is that you want to ink, you can do that. It really is very, very nice. And I have to say, this is going to be interesting to compare to, of course, HP Spectre lineup. I'm thinking of...
And I will be comparing this to several machines before my full review or after it. We'll see. But I have a feeling this is going to be able to best just about everything else that I have previously covered. Now, what may come in the future is a different story. Let's talk about actual performance. Now, the machine stays relatively quiet and it still performs pretty well. You can see here 3D Mark Time Spy over 2000, and that's just a competent Ultrabook. What else can I say? Intel's integrated graphics have gotten considerably better in the last 3 years, which means light gaming is totally possible at lower resolutions, even with some of your favorite titles. But, this is not a gaming machine. It is an Ultrabook, even though it may have a 75 watt-hour battery, which sounds like something you'd find in a desktop replacement. That's just because Lenovo, shifted to higher density cells on that battery. But beyond that, this is meant to be an Ultrabook that happens to be a 2-in-1 that's incredibly flexible, and now I think even nicer. And these, curved, soft corners as opposed to the old sharp edges, they make a big difference. I mean, when you're holding the device, it means that it's going to be far more comfortable in tablet mode. Granted, it's a little bit heavy at a little over 3 pounds, but part of the, I would say, trade-off of getting these new soft edges all around is that, unfortunately, they're not as easily, gripped. I would say your grip on them is going to be a little bit less tight, and that's also because we do have chrome all along. But I'll get to that a little bit later. That's really nitpicking at its finest, in my opinion, because the machine just has this modern and I think really refined design language. It was always very an industrial, minimalist look, and I think they built on that in a good way. Now, overall, when it comes to throttling, I'm not seeing a lot of that. The fans do kick up, things do get fairly loud when this thing's under load, but when we're just browsing the web, watching YouTube videos, content consumption of that sort, when you're actually doing anything with productivity work, the fans really aren't going to kick up. So the machine is fairly quiet. You can see right there the read-write scores on the NVMe SSD. Remember, it is Gen 4. You can upgrade that. One of the few things you can upgrade on this machine, but you won't need to. You just need to make sure you get the amount of storage that you need to in your original configuration. Again, this is a 1 terabyte NVMe on this particular build. I've only launched Rust as well as Call of Duty World War II just as a standard, benchmark to see if they could perform, and they can run, which is pretty much how I, guide things with Ultrabooks like this. Rust is pretty tough to run. Call of Duty World War II, pretty easy. It's getting a little bit older. I wouldn't try to run, something like Battlefield 2042 on here or Cyberpunk, which are other titles, that I do enjoy. But anything older is going to be pretty much fine at lower resolutions. When it comes to photo and video editing, you're also going to be perfectly fine on here. But remember, it's not designed to be a photo and video editing machine, but with Intel's 12th gen CPU, you are going to see better performance than the previous, which you might assume, but how much of a difference overall you're going to get out of the 12th versus 11th gen is another story, and I'll address that in the full review. Another thing that you can't miss is this nearly 50% larger trackpad, which I think is great. I mean, generally, I'm not a fan of huge, obnoxious trackpads, especially if when you're typing, it ends up becoming problematic on your wrists, essentially interfering in the process. The good news here is that Lenovo actually designed this trackpad with that in mind, and this entire, I would say, nearly 20% right here is not going to get triggered. You can see the mouse is really, now it's moving, but once 2 hands are on there and you're typing, it's really not, you can see the cursor is not shifting, and they took this into account. The actuation on this is good. It does actually press in. It is a glass trackpad, and I think they did a great job on that as well. You're going to hear a lot of that. Now, when it comes to the keyboard, another best-in-class experience. Some people will say there's not enough travel on these keys, but I think it's a really satisfying experience, and I think there's just enough. And I just realized that this mic I had adjusted for the audio performance, and hopefully that didn't kill the audio performance on the whole video, but now it's readjusted back to me. But back to the actual keyboard, it is edge to edge now, something that previously it was not, and I think they did a nice job. Again, now the keys that are right here, the function keys, I will call them, not like your traditional function keys, but Lenovo's. We've got a performance key right here that you can toggle through the performance modes instead of using function plus Q like days past, and it works. Then you've got a dedicated key to turning off the defocus of the background for the webcam. which, I don't know how many people really need that, but it's there. Then we have audio profiles. So we've got a gaming profile, we have a music profile, and then a movie, content consumption profile. And then last but not least, we have a key dedicated to switching you in and out of the essentially dark theme, the night mode for Windows versus day. And you can see the profile immediately changing. And then at the bottom, we have our fingerprint scanner. I think this is, a fairly novel integration. However, I do feel that it's something, the majority of users probably aren't going to necessarily care about. I don't think it's bad that it's there. I'm curious to see what all of you think. I'm sure many of you will feel that this space could have been used more wisely, and then I'm sure that there are users that are going to think this is cute rather than just a gimmick. I think when I look at this, I see Lenovo trying to appeal to Apple users and thinking that an Apple user is going to appreciate this, whereas I feel like a lot of Windows users are going to say this is a little bit of wasted space, if not a lot, especially considering we have an edge-to-edge keyboard now. Now, backlighting on this is pretty good. I'll go ahead and let me see if I can take down the studio lights so I can show that to you right now. And battery life, by the way, I would say 6 to 8 hours is what you're looking at. Generally speaking, I have been able to get 10 hours, but you're going to have to take that screen brightness all the way down and, of course, live in battery saver, but it is still totally possible. So let's go ahead and take the studio lights down, and then let me go ahead and show you what that backlighting looks like. So that's auto. Then we have a lower level and then the highest level. I think it's pretty good. I don't see anything wrong with that at all. I think the backlighting's actually, I would go as far as to say, again, excellent. You're hearing that word a lot because, again, Lenovo did a really good job with everything on this machine. I've yet to really find a corner they've cut. And as I mentioned, full HD webcam with that privacy shutter that has IR capability. So we've got Windows Hello, which, it's almost like Lenovo's listening, because generation after generation, I've always really liked the Yoga 9i, C940 before it, but OLED display option and a IR camera were the two things that were always missing. Now, it still does not have an SD card reader. That's something I can always hope for. A micro SD card reader is all I need, some form. That's just for me. Again, I think a lot of users can live without it and figure they'll just connect the device of choice that they need to read the card from, whether we're talking about cameras or whatever device you may be thinking of. That's something I would like to see. But in terms of general I/O, let's just take a look around the machine. You can see this charger connected right now is a typical Type-C charger. You can get up to 2 hours in 15 minutes on this. I'm going to go ahead and turn HDR off, by the way, because it automatically shut off there because we did have it on. Let me go ahead and close all of this out because you now got, I think, a pretty good idea of what to expect from this machine in general terms. I mean, solid battery life, good performance, a good webcam now with that 1080p full HD resolution. And it does really speak to a design language, I think, that reminds you of all the other devices in your daily routine, your smartphone, your tablet, and that's what it's trying to essentially become part of that mainstay in the ecosystem. So we have a Type A USB port, which is certainly nice to have. We have two Thunderbolt 4 ports there. They did designate one of them as the charging port. And then we have essentially some speakers. We go around to the front, and you can open this with a single hand. I demoed that in my unboxing. I don't think that's critical, but some of you do, so I'll make that mention. And then as we come around to the other side, we have our power button, which, in my first estimation, kind of looks like a SIM card tray in many ways. So again, resembling that smartphone that we already know and love and use on a daily basis. And then over here, this is not a Thunderbolt 4 port, but it is a Type-C port, 10 gigabit throughput, so nothing wrong with that. And a headphone microphone combo jack. And then, of course, on the bottom of the machine, we've got plenty of ventilation, speakers. I mean, the overall subwoofer layout here is, I think, really excellent. And then, of course, you've got that sound bar, which no matter which way you're going to use this, you're going to get that audio performance. So again, tent mode, the speaker is nearly facing you, but it's not obscured. That's what's important. Go into content consumption mode, and again, the speaker is pointed towards you. If you decide to go full on into tablet mode to use the pen, the speaker is still going to face you. And that's part of the beauty of the design of the Yoga, is that you aren't going to give up that audio quality in any of the different modes that you decide to use it. So really convenient. Again, best-in-class audio performance. And this is the Yoga that I've been waiting for Lenovo to finally put out. Now, one thing that I have not mentioned is, of course, the pen. And I'll probably end up doing a dedicated inking demo, and eventually in the full review get more into this. We no longer have a silo for it. All of the Yoga 9i, again, C940s prior to this, had a slot for a much thinner stylus to pocket in. That has been done away with. I actually don't think that's a big deal. I always appreciated that it was there, but part of the rub with that being there was that you didn't get a real pen. You got a stylus from, the Palm Pilot days, which, it was fine for something that was in there that you weren't going to lose, but wasn't comparable to having a true pen. And I do think this is better in just about every way. And my other half also concurs, the artist in the family. So the Precision Pen 3 is good. I would say it's, right up there with the best of them. And, that says a lot for what Lenovo has been trying to do with pen input on machines like this through every generation. And again, this is the 7th generation, and they've only been improving just like every other element of this machine. And the machine right now is basically dead silent. So again, 6 to 8 hours of battery life. You can squeeze out 10 if you're really aggressive. If you're willing to take the brightness down, not to that level, but right about here, then you're going to flirt with that 8 to 10 battery life. But again, you'll be in saver mode. And I think that's totally fine for a lot of people. However, if you crank it all the way up, and here it's going to look totally blown out, I do like to keep things right around there, somewhere in that area, so about 70 to 80% brightness. That's where you're going to be a lot closer to that 6 to 8 hour realistic, more like 6 to 7 hour range. And look, it feels like this is a complete review for me, but I just haven't spent enough time with it. So as impressed I am with all of these new design elements, the new hardware, particularly the display, the webcam, the real pen that you're getting now, which I haven't made a focus of this video, but is still important. Still never a fan of the button placement. I always feel like inadvertent presses of those buttons while writing is inherent with all of these. I know every pen out there incorporates buttons into that area, so maybe I'm talking to myself. Let me know if that's an issue for you as well. But it's a great machine so far. Now, whether or not people are going to, run out and buy it at that $2,000 or possibly even $2,200 US price point, I'm curious to know what all of you think. It's certainly in line with the competition. What I'm really curious about is whether or not we're going to see, of course, a larger version of this soon with OLED screen, with a discrete GPU, because that would just be phenomenal. And that would squarely face, obviously, the Spectre 16 that I reviewed a little while ago, which is also a gorgeous machine. And I may even end up comparing this to that as well, even though, of course, this is a 14-inch Ultrabook, and that's a much heavier laptop with a different class processor, and again, discrete GPU as opposed to the integrated Intel Iris Xe. But that pretty much rounds it out. Again, a really nice laptop, improved in every single way, and just excellent. And for those of you wondering how different it looks from the previous gen, let me just throw that in before I end this quick video that's not quick. Again, the previous generation with that leather finish on the top, of course, Yoga branding in a different orientation, the soundbar, not a B&O soundbar, but still really good. And you can see, again, very similar in some ways and yet very different in others. All of the ports on one side, again, Type A, 2 Thunderbolt ports, headphone, microphone combo jack, but we do now have an additional Type C port. So I think that kind of is a big deal. And when you look at those edges, you can see we've moved quite a ways from the squared off, sharp edges to the rounded now that we're working with. And I think that's a big deal, just for holding the machine. But overall, design has come a long way. Not that the old Yoga was in any way, ugly. I think it was a really nice machine. This is just nicer in every way, both on the outside and the inside. So really pleased with this. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them at that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe and please stay safe. Later.